At exactly 1 minute ago, the dark skies above the incredibly strategic waters of the Persian Gulf and the eastern Mediterranean Sea were shattered by an absolutely unprecedented escalation that plunged the entire region into a terrifying new chapter of the ongoing military conflict, heavily involving the armed forces of the United States, Israel, and Iran. This terrifying military escalation, which sent immediate shockwaves through global economic markets and international defense ministries alike, was not a random or isolated skirmish, but rather the spectacular climax of a week of incredibly intense military operations and highly complex geopolitical maneuvering that initially began with Israel significantly expanding its deeply established defensive perimeters across the volatile and heavily contested territories of Palestine and Lebanon, while the United States simultaneously mobilized its absolute ultimate naval strike assets to comprehensively secure the critical maritime choke points from newly threatened Iranian naval blockades. The incredibly intricate dance of destruction began precisely when an invisible and highly sophisticated web of Iranian electronic warfare systems, which had been secretly installed along the incredibly rugged coastlines and supported by deeply disguised civilian merchant vessels, attempted to completely blind the highly advanced and overlapping radar networks of an elite Israeli naval force that was navigating cautiously through international waters. Iran had meticulously planned and ruthlessly executed this massive multi-domain ambush as a direct and incredibly violent retaliation for the recent joint precision strikes conducted by the United States and Israel, which had systematically dismantled and utterly destroyed key Iranian ballistic missile production facilities and suicide drone launch infrastructure over the course of the past several incredibly bloody days. The comprehensive Iranian strategy relied entirely on executing a massive saturation attack designed specifically to overwhelm the vaunted and highly tested defensive capabilities of the Israeli warships and the heavily armed supporting United States Navy carrier strike groups operating nearby. From deeply hidden and heavily fortified underground silos situated deep within the incredibly mountainous and forbidding terrain of southern Iran, a massive coordinated barrage of newly upgraded solid fuel anti-ship cruise missiles roared violently into the night sky, their blazing exhaust plumes painting the heavy cloud cover in terrifying shades of bright orange and deep red. These terrifying standoff weapons, hurtling through the atmosphere at blinding speeds exceeding Mach 2, were specifically programmed to aggressively skim mere feet above the turbulent ocean wave, effectively utilizing the physical curvature of the Earth and the chaotic radar clutter of the sea surface to expertly mask their deadly approach from the incredibly long-range early warning detection systems of the Allied fleets. Simultaneously, an absolutely massive swarm of incredibly cheap but highly lethal kamikaze drones emerged from multiple covert coastal launch sites, resembling a dark mechanical plague unleashed into the night to relentlessly hunt down and destroy the advanced missile defense radar arrays protecting the Allied naval formation. The atmosphere inside the incredibly advanced Combat Information Center of the leading United States guided missile destroyer, the incredibly formidable USS Arleigh Burke, was thick enough to cut with a combat knife as the massive high-definition tactical screens suddenly bloomed with literally hundreds of hostile inbound tracks. The battle-hardened commanding officer, an incredibly seasoned veteran of numerous incredibly dangerous Middle Eastern combat deployments, instantly recognized the extreme gravity of the rapid deteriorating situation and immediately initiated the absolute highest state of General Quarters combat readiness. The mighty American warship, operating in absolutely seamless and flawless synergy with the highly advanced Israeli SAR-6 class missile corvettes, engaged its incredibly powerful Aegis combat system, completely integrating vast streams of targeting data from high orbital surveillance satellites, incredibly high-altitude stealth reconnaissance aircraft, and deeply submerged active sonar buoys, continuously dropped by heavily modified P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol planes into a single unified and terrifyingly accurate tactical battlefield picture. The incredible data fusion algorithms instantly revealed that the incoming Iranian projectiles were absolutely not acting alone, but were in fact being constantly guided and updated by an incredibly dense network of high-speed agile attack craft belonging directly to the heavily armed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. These incredibly fast and highly maneuverable attack boats, swarming relentlessly like a massive hive of angry hornets, were equipped with highly advanced passive optical sensors and incredibly heavy caliber machine guns desperately attempting to quickly close the physical distance and absolutely physically overwhelm the Allied naval formation through sheer numbers and chaotic aggression. The incredibly capable forces of the United States and Israel, however, were absolutely not simply sitting ducks waiting passively to be struck by this incredibly massive wave of Iranian steel and explosive fury. The highly elite Israeli Air Force, having already maintained absolute and completely uncontested air superiority over the embattled skies of Palestine and the entirely surrounding regional airspace, seamlessly and immediately redirected an incredibly lethal combat squadron of highly advanced F-35I Adir stealth fighter jets directly toward the rapidly unfolding maritime battle space. These incredible fifth-generation marvels of modern military aviation technology, flying in a state of absolutely complete and total electronic silence, expertly utilized their completely unmatched, active electronically scanned array synthetic aperture radar and incredibly sensitive electro-optical targeting systems to absolutely precisely pinpoint the incredibly fast-moving Iranian surface vessels and the heavily camouflaged coastal missile batteries, continuously feeding them critical targeting data. The incredibly stealthy fighters simultaneously unleashed an absolutely devastating volley of highly advanced precision guided standoff weapons, each specifically carrying incredibly advanced deep, penetrating high explosive warheads designed exclusively to utterly obliterate the incredibly heavily fortified subterranean command bunkers and massive radar arrays directly orchestrating the incredibly complex Iranian ambush as the Israeli stealth jets flawlessly delivered their incredibly surgical and utterly devastating kinetic strikes. The massively powerful United States aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford unleashed its own incredibly formidable aerial armada, rapidly launching highly advanced E-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft that immediately and aggressively activated their highly classified next-generation radar jamming pods. These incredibly sophisticated and wildly powerful electronic warfare systems forcefully bombarded the delicate Iranian missile seekers and highly encrypted communication networks with an absolute torrent of highly focused and incredibly intense electromagnetic interference, rapidly creating a massive digital black hole that completely blinded the incoming crew's missile threats and entirely severed the vital command and control data links between the swarming attack boats and their desperate commanders ashore. Deprived entirely of their crucial mid-course targeting data, the heavily armed Iranian cruise missiles immediately began to veer wildly off their intended intercept courses, plunging completely, harmlessly into the cold, dark ocean waters, or violently detonating prematurely in mid-air, their massive destructive potential completely neutralized by the incredibly powerful invisible shield of Allied electronic dominance. The true technological marvel and absolute crowning achievement of this incredibly chaotic and deadly night, however, was the absolutely flawless performance of the cooperative engagement capability. Data network perfectly linking the United States and Israeli warships into a single cohesive combat entity. When a small handful of incredibly advanced hypersonic glide vehicles, representing the absolute bleeding edge of heavily sanctioned Iranian missile technology, miraculously managed to momentarily break through the deeply layered initial waves of intense electronic interference, the heavily armed Allied ships instantly responded not as individual vulnerable vessels, but as a single incredibly unified and highly lethal organism. The deeply proven sea-based Iron Dome missile defense system, recently deployed extensively aboard the highly advanced Israeli naval corvettes, synchronized absolutely perfectly with the incredibly lethal Standard Missile 3 and Standard Missile 6 hypersonic interceptors aggressively launched from the massive vertical launch systems of the deeply entrenched United States guided missile destroyers. The previously dark night sky instantly erupted into an absolutely spectacular and terrifying light show as the massive interceptor missiles violently collided with their incredibly fast hypersonic targets at absolutely unimaginable high atmospheric altitudes, rapidly creating incredibly massive superheated fireballs that brightly illuminated the entire dark ocean far below. Every single incredibly dangerous incoming missile threat was systematically and absolutely flawlessly neutralized, completely vaporized into tiny clouds of burning metallic confetti before it could even potentially come close to breaching the deeply layered protective defensive perimeters of the combined Allied fleet. The absolutely sheer computing power and incredibly flawless mechanical precision required to successfully execute these incredibly difficult kinetic intercepts at such wildly extreme closing speeds and extreme atmospheric altitudes represented a truly monumental and absolutely undeniable triumph of Western military engineering and highly advanced tactical combat doctrine. But the increasingly desperate Iranian forces, absolutely refusing to simply concede total defeat, angrily activated their incredibly covert and highly deadly subsurface maritime assets forcefully, plunging the incredibly intense battle deep into the completely murky and highly dangerous depths of the dark ocean. The incredibly sensitive passive acoustic listening sensors, continuously trailing far behind the fast-moving Allied warships, suddenly detected the incredibly faint, but absolutely unmistakable, mechanical acoustic signature of multiple heavily armed Iranian midget attack submarines desperately attempting to silently slip completely unnoticed through the incredibly dense defensive acoustic net and forcefully position themselves for absolutely devastating point-blank heavy-wake homing torpedo attacks. These incredibly stealthy and highly dangerous underwater hunters, specifically optimized for operations within the incredibly shallow and highly acoustically complex coastal waters of the region, posed an incredibly potent and completely immediate tactical threat, demanding an absolutely immediate and incredibly overwhelming kinetic response from the Allied anti-submarine forces. The highly trained United States Navy anti-submarine warfare helicopter cruised quickly and aggressively descended their incredibly advanced aircraft directly toward the dark water surface rapidly, deploying highly sensitive active dipping sonar arrays and continuously dropping long strings of highly advanced active and passive sonobuoys that immediately flooded the entire underwater acoustic environment with incredibly powerful and deeply penetrating acoustic ping pulses. The absolutely relentless and incredibly loud active sonar pinging reverberated violently against the thin titanium and steel hulls of the slowly creeping Iranian midget submarines, completely stripping away their heavily relied upon acoustic stealth camouflage and brightly painting them as incredibly clear and absolutely undeniable high-value combat targets on the brightly glowing tactical digital displays of the wildly circling Allied hunting helicopters. Without a single moment of hesitation, the highly trained airborne submarine hunters immediately released highly advanced lightweight homing torpedoes that aggressively dove deep beneath the crashing ocean waves, their highly advanced active acoustic seekers immediately and perfectly locking onto the incredibly desperate and highly erratic evasive maneuvers of the completely doomed enemy submarines. The massively violent ensuing underwater high-explosive detonations instantly sent incredibly massive towering shockwaves violently rushing to the ocean surface completely and utterly neutralizing the incredibly dangerous subterranean maritime threat and absolutely definitively fully securing the entire contested maritime domain for the highly victorious combined fleets of the United States and Israel. The absolutely massive and deeply profound geopolitical ramifications of this incredibly decisive and highly public Allied military victory immediately echoed far beyond the immediate smoky confines of the maritime battlefield, fundamentally and completely altering the entire strategic defensive calculus of the entire highly volatile Middle East by completely and utterly neutralizing the incredibly massive and highly layered multi-domain Iranian naval ambush. The deeply allied forces of the United States and Israel successfully sent an absolutely unmistakable and highly terrifying message of absolute military deterrence, proving beyond any reasonable doubt that their deeply integrated defensive combat architecture and overwhelmingly powerful offensive strike capabilities were vastly more than capable of flawlessly handling any potential future military escalation. The completely successful and highly violent defense of these incredibly critical international maritime waterways definitively ensured the absolutely uninterrupted continued free flow of vital global commercial shipping and deeply reinforced the completely unwavering and highly public commitment of the United States government to the absolute security and continued survival of the State of Israel and its various other deeply important regional democratic partners. Meanwhile, back on the incredibly contested and highly tense land borders the completely ongoing and incredibly complex military security operations heavily ongoing within the deeply divided regions of Palestine continued to actively unfold against the massive and violent backdrop of this incredibly enormous naval engagement, highly highlighting the completely complex and deeply interconnected operational nature of the entire regional security defense environment. The incredibly intricate and highly delicate balance of military power, heavily and continuously influenced by the absolute constant and highly dangerous specter of completely relentless Iranian military interference and highly funded violent proxy warfare, consistently required absolutely constant strategic vigilance and completely adaptable high-level military combat strategies from both the incredibly well-equipped armed forces of the United States and the highly elite defense forces of Israel. As the bright morning sun slowly began to rise over the heavily smoking and completely destroyed remnants of the heavily fortified Iranian coastal missile batteries, the absolutely true and highly devastating scale of the massive Allied military triumph became completely and undeniably apparent to the entire watching world. The incredibly once highly feared and deeply formidable Iranian small boat swarming naval tactics and incredibly highly touted long-range ballistic strike capabilities had been absolutely, systematically and completely dismantled, utterly exposed, as being completely and ultimately entirely futile when forced to fight against the absolutely overwhelming, highly advanced technological supremacy and completely seamless data interoperability of the deeply allied United States and elite Israeli armed military forces. The completely and utterly failed Iranian maritime ambush successfully served as an absolutely stark and highly terrifying reminder of the completely devastating and highly lethal kinetic consequences of aggressively miscalculating the absolute unyielding resolve and massively overwhelming destructive capability of the fully mobilized Allied military power. In the incredibly busy aftermath of the massive naval battle, highly trained military intelligence analysts and incredibly secretive international intelligence agencies meticulously and exhaustively reviewed the massive troves of newly captured sensor data and highly classified intercepted enemy communications, successfully extracting incredibly invaluable deep tactical insights into the constantly evolving combat tactics and highly dangerous technological weapons advancements of the incredibly secretive Iranian military defense apparatus. This absolutely continuous and highly vital cycle of constant intelligence, gathering rapid tactical military adaptation, and incredibly relentless technological weapons innovation currently forms the absolute and completely undeniable core foundation of incredibly highly advanced modern multi-domain warfare, continuously ensuring that the deeply allied forces of the United States and Israel remain absolutely and constantly heavily prepared for absolutely whatever incredibly dangerous new military threats may suddenly emerge quickly on the dark global horizon. The absolutely relentless and completely unyielding pursuit of absolute total military battlefield superiority, deeply driven by the completely profound and highly urgent need to strictly protect vulnerable national sovereignty and definitively ensure lasting regional strategic stability, absolutely strictly dictates the ongoing and massively funded rapid development of incredibly highly advanced next-generation combat weapon systems and massively complex defensive data networks, the highly anticipated future combat deployment of incredibly advanced high-energy, directed energy weapons, highly sophisticated artificial intelligence, driven fully autonomous robotic combat platforms, and incredibly fast next-generation hypersonic ballistic missile defense interceptors will absolutely and completely undoubtedly continuously shape the incredibly violent future of armed strategic conflict in this incredibly vital and incredibly highly volatile global region. The completely steadfast and deeply historic military alliance existing securely between the deeply aligned nations of the United States and Israel, strongly forged through many long decades of deeply shared strategic national interests and highly mutual, incredibly vital security, concerns securely remains the absolute and entirely unshakable core bedrock of incredibly vital strategic stability in the entirely highly contested Middle East, effectively serving as an absolutely insurmountable and completely impenetrable defensive bulwark, heavily operating against the incredibly destabilizing and highly dangerous regional geopolitical ambitions of the radical government of Iran and its entirely massive, heavily funded network of incredibly violent regional proxies. The absolutely continuous and highly complex, deeply integrated joint military training combat exercises entirely highly classified military technology sharing agreements and completely flawlessly coordinated multi-domain massive military combat operations absolutely definitively ensure that their fully combined elite military forces continuously operate with a massive level of lethal combat, synergy, and absolute tactical battlefield lethality that absolutely no potential hostile adversary can ever possibly hope to successfully match or defeat. As the heavy smoke effectively settles completely on this absolutely latest and incredibly highly explosive military chapter of the ongoing deeply violent regional conflict, the entire global community watches incredibly closely with absolutely bated breath, fully and completely aware that the incredibly fragile and highly delicate overall peace of the entire, incredibly volatile region hangs delicately in the absolute balance, entirely resting securely upon the incredibly massively overwhelming kinetic military might, and absolutely completely unwavering, incredibly constant eternal vigilance of the deeply powerful allied military powers, the incredibly dedicated and highly trained brave men and women currently serving faithfully aboard the incredibly advanced warships, highly sophisticated stealth aircraft, and completely deeply buried secure command centers of the deeply allied United States and highly elite Israeli armed forces proudly stand globally as the absolute ultimate undisputed incredibly reliable global guarantors of that incredibly highly vital peace, entirely completely ready to aggressively and overwhelmingly violently confront absolutely any potential strategic challenge and utterly and completely permanently neutralize absolutely any highly dangerous regional threat that foolishly dares to aggressively jeopardize the deeply cherished absolute security of their beloved home nation. The completely highly explosive, incredibly intense combat events of this absolutely historic and deeply highly consequential, incredibly busy past week have definitively and entirely completely proven, beyond absolutely any possible shadow of a single lingering strategic doubt, that whenever directly aggressively confronted with outright violent, massive, hostile, unprovoked, incredibly dangerous military aggression, the immediate, heavily integrated, and completely deeply unified, overwhelming, incredibly absolute, massively destructive, incredibly massive, tactical, strategic, devastating response of the heavily armed United Armed Forces of the deeply allied nations of the incredibly powerful United States and the completely heavily fortified nation of Israel will undoubtedly forever continuously remain entirely, absolutely, unbelievably immediate, deeply, utterly, incredibly, completely overwhelming, and absolutely, without any question, entirely, totally, absolutely, entirely, comprehensively, perfectly, unquestionably, thoroughly, entirely, completely, absolutely, completely, fundamentally devastating.